So in this video, we're going to be talking about Aries moon in the third house and what this means for you. Now, in general, what the moon shows us is it shows us the person's emotions. It shows us what somebody's comfort is derived from. So it shows us, what gives somebody security. And finally, it shows like a intellectual or like a spiritual or like a physical resource that the individual uses in order to manifest or in order to do things in the world. So in this case, it's in the third house. So a way to derive that is the meaning of that is these people use their mind or their thought process as a resource to navigate life. And this is where their comfort zone lies when the moon is in the third house, which is the case with this placement. Now, with that being said, the moon is in Aries, and this indicates an emotional need to be independent, to be active as well, and to be able to act freely or do things the way that you feel is right, or the way that you feel is in alignment, or else this can cause you to feel angry, frustrated, or irritable, or you can act impulsively or have emotional outbursts. So, and in this case, the moon is in the third house, so you can have verbal outbursts, like you'll communicate something mean, or like you'll dump a bunch of logical criticism on the other people when you're just feeling angry, annoyed, or frustrated. Generally speaking, the moon in Aries is not a comfortable place for the moon to be. It's more so of a challenging placement that indicates the need to balance one's own subjectivity and how one feels with how others will feel, or with the consequences of your actions or what you do. In this case, it's in the third house, which is about communication and the way that we think and the way we come to conclusions. So generally speaking, when the moon is in Aries in the third house, this means that the ascendant is Aquarius. And when the moon is in the third house, it's in the 12th from its own house, which is the fourth house. First of all, with Aquarius, this indicates that you feel somewhat emotionally detached. In fact, you lack emotions, or you feel like you don't have emotions, and also you feel like you don't have bias. And that is because the only things that you feel is what, like, the only conclusions that make sense to you are ones that make sense to you subjectively. So the way that are in alignment with how you think. If things don't make sense, you feel like they don't matter, because the moon, the ascendant is in Aquarius in this case, but the moon is in the 12th house from its own house. The 12th is about not lack, but like unconsciousness, or like non-existence. So you have like non-existent emotions a lot of times, or like just in general, people that have this placement can have a lack of emotion, or just a lack of emotional awareness. That's the other version, or the other manifestation, because the 12th influence is about unconsciousness. And like I said, what matters to you and what you feel is right is what makes sense mentally. You don't care too much about emotions, and you don't like bias, and you feel like you are not biased, and you are kind of a smart aleck because you realize that you're not emotional, you're not biased, and therefore you have this need to for others to respect your thought process. And you also have this need to be intellectually in charge of things, because when the moon is in Aries, this indicates often a need to be in charge, or just a need to be independent, like I said. So on a side note, the way that you think often tends to cause a lot of verbal debate or like verbal disagreements. but you tend to come out on top in these things, especially when others introduce emotions or bias to their arguments. If not, then it can just escalate. If the other person is also an intellectual warrior, then your arguments can escalate in volume or in anger. And that's because of the moon being in Aries. And just in general, you're competitive and you feel motivated. So the final thing that I'm going to talk about is there's this tendency to be unconscious of your emotions or your anger, like I was talking about earlier. So you tend to be unconscious of when your anger or your need to beat others is clouding your mind, your judgment, and when it's causing you to make emotionally unintelligent decisions or to do mean things or say mean things. Now, this is because as well, especially if you have Gemini in your 5th house, this indicates that the way you think is tied to your ego. And with Gemini being in the 5th house, which is a fixed fire house, you feel like the way that you think is tied to your self-worth and to your ego, like I said, but it indicates that you're very fixed in how you think because the 5th house is a fixed fire house. So you never let down and you often win arguments, but you can cause a lot of emotional wreckage and damage. That's the only flaw with your thinking, but you have very solid thinking. Now, with that being said, if you didn't relate to this, since the moon shows us our upbringing and it especially shows us the nurturing figures or the mother, even somebody that took care of us as a child, or just the way that we were raised in our family, because the moon rules family, this could show that these traits are traits of people that raised you, or this could just have been an element of how you were raised. Very emotionally detached, very logical, and very competitive, or you had like an intellectual authority. Like you had somebody that always set the tone or set the rules based on what they think. And as soon as you introduced bias or emotions, or you did something that didn't make sense, they would criticize it, or they would use that as a reasoning why they are right. And why. So, that's the kind of energy with this placement. Again, the moon in Aries is a challenging placement, and that's because it's in the 10th sign from its own sign of Cancer. And also, it's basically a square to Cancer. Squares are about lessons or challenges. So in this lifetime, you're learning how to control your impulses and balance it with the perspectives of others and the emotions of others, or how to weigh the consequences of your emotional impulses. Because the 10th house influence is about the emotions of others. The 10th house opposes the 4th house. Anyways, I'm getting a little bit off track, but the 4th house is about our own emotions. The 10th house is about the emotions of others, and why the 10th house rules consequences, restrictions, authorities, and so on and so forth. Now, with that being said, I hope you guys found that insightful. If you saw yourself in some way in this video, then don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to this channel if you would like to see more content. Other than that, I appreciate you guys watching and supporting in any way that you do. And I will see you guys sometime soon in another video. Peace.